The full documentary of proto-civilizations explained in few minutes for better experience. Now let's begin. And they were not supposed to exist. Massive stone pillars rising from the earth, carved with animals that seemed to move in the light, arranged with mathematical precision. No metal tools, no writing, no cities, no kings. And yet, someone built this. When scientists finally confirmed its age, silence followed. Because this place was older than farming, older than villages, older than civilization itself. If this is true, then everything we were taught about the beginning of humanity is wrong. To understand what this means, we must go back. Far back. Before history had a name. Before humans ruled the land. Before the first city was ever imagined. 12,000 years ago, the world was changing. Ice sheets melted. Rivers expanded. Grasslands spread across continents. Animals moved. And humans followed. For generations, the story was simple. Humans lived in small groups. They hunted with stone tools. They gathered wild plants. They moved constantly, chasing food. No permanent homes. No long-term plans. No monuments. Survival ruled every decision. No one stayed in one place long enough to build something meant to last. Or so we believed. In modern-day Turkey, there was a hill. Nothing remarkable. Farmers plowed it year after year. Stones surfaced. Soil shifted. In the 1960s, archaeologists glanced at it. They assumed it was a graveyard. And they walked away. History nearly stayed buried. Decades later, digging began again. Carefully, slowly, and the ground opened. Stone emerged. Not rubble. Not crude blocks. Perfect pillars. Tall. Smooth. Shaped with intention. The deeper they dug, the more impossible it became. Each pillar was carved. Foxes. Snakes. Birds. Lions. Every animal placed deliberately. Every symbol repeated across multiple stones. The pillars stood in circles. Not one. Many. Each circle older than the one above it. This place had a name. Göbekli Tepe. And it should not exist. The builders were hunter-gatherers. They had no farms. No beasts of burden. No cities to feed workers. Yet they quarried stone weighing many tons. Transported it. Raised it. Again. And again. For centuries. This was not accidental. This was planning. Archaeologists asked a dangerous question. Why would people struggling to survive build this? These were not houses. Not fortifications. Not graves. They served no obvious practical purpose. They were something else. Something shared. A radical idea emerged. What if humans came together not for food, but for belief? For ritual? For meaning? What if shared ideas mattered before survival strategies? If true, this changes everything. To test this idea, scientists looked deeper. Further back. Across the ancient world, similar patterns appeared. Stone towers standing alone in the Levant. Ritual grounds in Africa without villages. Long burial mounds in Europe built before farming. Different continents. Same behavior. People gathered. But they did not stay. At these sites, archaeologists found something strange. Thousands of animal bones. Too many for daily life. Too organized to be waste. This was feasting. Large, planned gatherings. Which meant someone called people together. Someone coordinated. Someone led. And yet, there were no kings. No palaces. No armies. No written laws. Power existed, but it was invisible. Influence. Trust. Belief. Authority without force. This was not chaos. And it was not civilization. It was something in between. Proto-civilization. Humanity experimenting with how to live together. Sharing work. Sharing food. Sharing meaning. They did not build for comfort. They built for identity. Life remained dangerous. One bad season meant starvation. One injury could mean death. And yet, they carved stone. That tells us something extraordinary. Humans were no longer living just to survive. They were living to belong. Over time, gatherings grew larger. Groups met groups. Ideas traveled. Stone from distant mountains appeared. Shells from faraway coasts. Trade existed before money. Movement existed before roads. The world was connecting. Then the climate shifted again. Some lands grew wetter. Wild grains spread naturally. People noticed. They stayed longer. They protected patches. They saved seeds. Farming was born. But here is the truth that shattered history. The monuments came first. Belief came first. Farming followed. Everything we believed was backward. With food surplus came population growth. Villages formed. Walls appeared. Land became something to defend. Someone controlled storage. Someone guarded supplies. Someone decided who ate. Hierarchy was born quietly. No crowns, no thrones, just control. Proto-civilizations were not built for hierarchy. They were built on trust. And trust is fragile. At many sites, signs of sudden endings appear. Burned layers, broken tools, half-finished structures. People left quickly, not peacefully. And then came the most chilling detail. Many sites were not abandoned. They were buried. At Göbekli Tepe, the stone circles were carefully filled in. Not destroyed, not smashed, sealed, as if someone wanted them hidden, protected, or forgotten. Why bury something sacred? Unless it had become dangerous. Belief can unite people, but when belief fails, it can tear them apart. Sacred places become reminders of fear, so they closed them, stone by stone, ending an age. Civilization rose soon after. Cities, writing, kings. History began recording names. But history only remembers what is written. Proto-civilizations vanished from memory, buried under soil, buried under cities, buried under wrong ideas. Modern tools reopened the earth. And now scientists face a terrifying question. If humans organized like this before farming, what else did we forget? Only a fraction of Göbekli Tepe is excavated. Nearby hills show similar shapes, similar stones, similar layouts. This was not one site. It was a network, a lost chapter of humanity. At a deeper layer nearby, something unexpected appeared. Not animals, not art, lines, dots, patterns, too precise to be random. Not writing, but close, very close. Counting, time, memory, record. Beneath that layer, the ground was unnaturally flat, prepared, cleared, as if something older had stood there, removed, erased, which means proto-civilization may not have been the first attempt. It may have been the second. Civilization may not have risen once. It may have risen, collapsed, and risen again, leaving no cities, no writing, no clear memory, only buried stone. And in the next chapter, we dig deeper, into the ground, and into a time humanity may have tried to erase from its own past. Because the deeper scientists dig, the more it looks like civilization did not begin. It returned. The ground beneath them was already prepared. That was the detail that made archaeologists stop breathing. The soil was flat, too clean. Nature does not do this. Wind does not scrape land smooth. Rain does not level stone. Someone had been here before. The land had been cleared, measured, readied. Göbekli Tepe was not built on untouched earth. It was built on top of something older. This is where the story becomes uncomfortable. Because if proto-civilization was rebuilding on prepared ground, then it was not humanity's first great experiment. It was a restart. Something had ended. Something had been cleared away. And whatever came after did not begin at zero. To understand what came before, archaeologists had to stop looking at monuments and start looking at what was missing, not what existed, but what did not. Long stretches of time, no settlements, no tools, no camps, silence in the archaeological record. Then suddenly, complex construction, no gradual build-up, no learning curve, just appearance. This should not happen. Human progress is supposed to be slow, messy, mistakes piled on mistakes. But proto-civilization appears already knowing how to plan, how to measure space, how to organize hundreds of people without force. That knowledge had to come from somewhere, but there is no visible origin. So researchers stepped back again, much further, to the end of the last ice age, to a world on the edge of collapse. Around 13,000 years ago, the Earth changed rapidly. Ice sheets melted, sea levels rose, land vanished, coastlines flooded. Entire regions disappeared beneath the ocean. Places where humans had lived for thousands of years. Gone. Forever. This matters more than we once believed. Because humans have always lived near water. Rivers, lakes, coasts. These were the richest environments. The safest. The most stable. And now they are underwater. We cannot dig there. We cannot excavate memory. We can only imagine what was lost. This means the story we tell about early humanity is incomplete by nature. The ground itself has erased chapters. What we call the beginning may simply be the oldest thing left, not the first thing that existed. Some researchers propose a quiet but radical idea. Before inland proto-civilizations, there were coastal societies, people who fished, who built boats, who read tides and seasons, people who learned cooperation long before farming. When the seas rose, these societies vanished. Survivors moved inland. They carried knowledge, but lost their homes. Survivors do not forget everything. They adapt. They simplify. They preserve what matters most. This could explain the sudden appearance of complex monuments. Why planning already existed. Why belief systems were already layered. Proto-civilization may not be the beginning. It may be what survived. Loss changes people. When everything is taken, meaning becomes vital. Stories, rituals, shared memory. Belief becomes an anchor, something that cannot drown. Across proto-civilization sites, symbols repeat. The same animals, similar layouts, related patterns, not identical, but connected. This is not coincidence. It is inheritance. Ideas moving with people. Proto-civilization was not a single culture. It was a network. Groups meeting seasonally, gathering at sacred places, sharing food, sharing stories, sharing rules for living. No borders, no nations, just understanding. But networks are fragile. The larger they grow, the harder they are to hold together. Trust stretches thin. Misunderstanding spreads. Belief becomes vulnerable to control. And this is where cracks begin to appear. At some sites, new structures appear beside old ones. Smaller, more enclosed, less open. Storage pits. Ownership. The idea of mine. Burials change. Some bodies are honored. Others are ignored. Status is forming. Quietly. Without announcement. Hierarchy does not arrive loudly. It creeps in. Archaeologists see signs of strain. Walls where none existed before. Tools repurposed for defense. Ritual space is shrinking. Others expanding. Choices are being made. And not everyone agrees. Some groups embrace farming. They stay. They grow. They accept hierarchy. These will become cities. Others resist. They cling to movement. Shared food. Shared ritual. But the world is changing, and it no longer favors them. As farming spreads, land becomes valuable. Nomads become threats. Old systems are pushed aside. Peaceful gathering is no longer safe. This explains something crucial. Why proto-civilization sites were buried, not destroyed, closed. If your way of life is ending, you do not abandon the sacred. You seal it. You protect the memory. And you leave. At Göbekli Tepe, the burial was careful. Stone chips placed deliberately. Broken tools laid gently. No panic. No chaos. This was not flight. It was a decision. A goodbye. Not everyone left. Some stayed nearby. They built simpler homes. They adapted. And over generations, meaning faded. Belief became habit. Then myth. Then silence. Then writing appeared. With it came kings. Laws. Taxes. Armies. History began. And anything without writing vanished from memory. Proto-civilization did not fail. It was overwritten. Now we return to the markings. Lines. Dots. Patterns. Across different sites, they repeat. Same spacing. Same counts. Place where people would see them. These may record seasons. Gatherings. Events. Time. A way to remember without writing. Which means proto-civilizations were already thinking historically. In cycles. In continuity. If they remembered, they may have remembered something we do not. A flood. A collapse. A loss so great it reshaped belief itself. Across cultures, ancient myths speak of a time before cities. Before kings. A great change. Not gods. Not magic. Memory turning into story. Now something even stranger has appeared. At a newly surveyed site, beneath the proto-civilization layer. Tool marks. Not on stone. On bedrock. Marks of removal. Clean. Deliberate. There is no structure left. No artifact. Only absence. Something was taken. Something reused. Or something erased. If something older existed, then proto-civilization was not building from nothing. It was rebuilding. Human history is not a straight line. It is a circle. We follow absence itself. Drowned coastlines. Forgotten lands. Lost technologies. To confront the most disturbing idea of all. That the first human world did not fall by accident, but by forces humanity could not control, and may not survive again. The sea keeps secrets better than the land. When the last ice age ended, the ice did not melt politely. It melted fast, violently. The oceans rose not over centuries, but over generations. Water swallowed coastlines where humans had lived for thousands of years. Villages vanished. Paths disappeared. Entire worlds sank without ceremony. And with them went answers we may never fully recover. For most of modern history, archaeologists searched in the wrong places. They dug deserts. They dug valleys. They dug hills. But early humans did not choose hills first. They chose water, rivers for food, coasts for fish, shallow seas for travel. The places humans loved most are now underwater. This is why proto-civilization appears to arrive out of nowhere. Not because it emerged suddenly, but because its earlier chapters are submerged. We are reading a book with its first pages torn out. Modern maps lie. They show today's coastlines, not the ancient ones. 12,000 years ago, the shoreline was far beyond where waves crash today. Where tourists swim, people once walked, built fires, raised children, lived full lives. When scientists began mapping the seabed, something unsettling appeared. Flat regions, straight edges, shapes that do not belong to nature. Not proof, but hints. Enough to make researchers pause. Enough to raise quiet questions. In some drowned regions, fishermen pulled stone tools from their nets. Too old, too far from shore. Human-made objects in places no humans should have ever reached. Except they once did. If early coastal societies existed, they would have known the sea. They would have built boats. They would have traveled along coastlines. They would have shared ideas long before farming tied people to land. Movement spreads knowledge. Still does. Proto-civilization may not have invented planning, or cooperation, or ritual. It may have inherited them, passed down from a drowned world. When the waters rose, survivors fled inland. They carried memory. But memory without writing fades. It bends. It reshapes itself. It becomes ritual. It becomes symbol. It becomes stone. This could explain the carvings, the animals, the repeating patterns across wide distances. Not coincidence. Tradition. Fragments of shared memory carved into permanence. But survival is never clean. Loss leaves scars. Fear demands explanation. When the sea takes your home, belief becomes survival. Ritual becomes control. Meaning becomes safety. Proto-civilization sites may have been places of remembrance, or warning, or promises. Places where people gathered to say, this happened, and it must not happen again. But nature does not make promises. Climate records show chaos. Sudden cold snaps, violent droughts, floods without mercy. The world was unstable. One bad change could shatter fragile systems. Proto-civilizations were built on cooperation. But cooperation struggles under stress. As populations moved inland, resources tightened. Old networks strained. Disagreements hardened. Some groups adapted. They farmed. They stored food. They defended land. These groups survived, at a cost. Others tried to keep the old ways. Movement, sharing, ritual without ownership. They faded. Not violently, quietly. And then power found a new form. With stored food came control. With control came leaders who could command, not persuade. With command came inequality. The world shifted. Slowly, irreversibly. From cooperation to control. Proto-civilizations became stories. Then myths. Then nothing. But the land remembers. Even when people forget. At early farming sites, archaeologists found reused stone. Old pillars cut down. Old carvings turned inward. Symbols hidden from view. Not destroyed. Silenced. Why hide the past instead of celebrating it? Unless the past challenged the present. Unless it reminded people of a time without kings. Without forced obedience. So the old sites were buried. Covered. Forgotten. And a new story was written. Farming came first. Cities came next. Civilization was born. Simple. Comfortable. Wrong. Now the buried truth is rising again. New technology scans the ground without digging. It sees beneath the surface. And what it sees does not fit the story. Beneath known sites, deeper layers appear. Flattened ground. Cleared spaces. Signs of activity. Not houses. Not graves. Platforms. Prepared land. This suggests long-term planning before monuments. Before proto-civilization as we understand it. Something older. Something deliberate. Which leads to an unsettling thought. What if proto-civilization was not humanity's first attempt at complexity? What if it was the last memory of something earlier? Something coastal. Something mobile. Something erased by the sea. Not an advanced lost empire. Not magic. Just humans. Early. Intelligent. Adaptable. Gone. If this is true, then civilization is fragile. Not destiny. A gamble. Every system depends on stability. Food. Water. Trust. When those fail, everything collapses. The people of proto-civilization may have known this. They may have tried to warn the future. through placement, through symbols, through stone. At a recently studied site near an ancient riverbed, a stone slab was found. No animals, no symbols, just a surface worn smooth. And along its edge, marks. Repeated, exact, purposeful, measurements. This is not ritual. This is planning. If they were measuring land, or water, or time, then they were already managing resources, already predicting change, already preparing, which raises the most frightening question yet. If they were preparing, what were they preparing for? Now let's move to next stage. We confront the collapse layers, the abandoned plans, the moment humanity chose control over cooperation. And we ask the question that echoes through every age. Did civilization save us? Or did it cost us something we can never get back? The unfinished stone, the stone was never finished. That is what makes it unsettling. It lies exactly where it fell, its edges smoothed with care, its surface marked by precise lines. Whoever worked on it understood measurement, understood planning, understood purpose. Every mark was intentional. And then, they stopped. No cracks from violence, no ash from fire, no signs of panic, just silence. The kind of silence that follows a decision. Archaeologists have a term for this. Abandonment without collapse. It means the danger did not come from enemies. It did not come from invasion. It came from within, from choice, from knowing something could continue, but deciding it should not. By the time proto-civilization reached its height, humanity stood at a crossroads. They had learned how to gather without force, how to build without kings, how to share meaning across wide distances without borders. They had proven it was possible, but possibility does not guarantee survival. The world began to shift again. Climate turned unpredictable. Rivers changed course. Wet years collapsed into drought. Animals followed new paths. Food became uncertain. And uncertainty is dangerous, because uncertainty erodes trust. Proto-civilizations were built on cooperation, but cooperation depends on choice. It works only when people believe tomorrow will come. When survival is threatened, choice disappears. People stop asking, what do we share? They start demanding what is guaranteed. This is when farming changed. It stopped being an option and became a rule. Fields were claimed. Seeds were guarded. Food was stored and controlled. The question was no longer who belongs. It became who decides. The ground records this shift clearly. Early farming settlements tell a different story. Houses become unequal. Some grow larger. Some store more grain. Burials change. Some receive gifts. Others receive nothing. Power had arrived. Quietly. Permanently. This was not the leap from wild to civilized. It was something else. The shift from shared life to controlled life. From persuasion to authority. From belonging to hierarchy. Proto-civilization could not survive this world. Its greatest strength became its weakness. Without force, it could not compete. Without hierarchy, it could not defend land. Without control, it could not guarantee food. So it ended. Not with fire, not with conquest, but with silence. Sacred places were buried. Networks dissolved. Knowledge faded into ritual, then into story, then into myth. The survivors adapted. They became farmers. They became villagers. They became subjects. Within generations, no one remembered a world without rulers. Civilization rose. Cities formed. Writing appeared. Kings carved their names into stone. History began. Loud, permanent, selective. History records the voices of winners, not the alternatives they replaced. The old ways were not written down. They were overwritten, but traces survived. In layouts copied unconsciously. In rituals stripped of meaning. In myths of a time before kings. Every ancient civilization remembers it. A golden age. A balance. A fall. Not fantasy. Memory. Proto-civilization did not fail because it was weak. It failed because it asked too much of humans. Trust. Patience. Restraint. Control is easier. Hierarchy is faster. Power lasts longer. And it spreads. But control has a price. As civilization grew, so did conflict. Borders hardened. Wars followed. Inequality deepened. The world became richer and more fragile. Now, thousands of years later, we uncover buried stones. And the feeling they leave behind is not pride. It is loss. Proto-civilization shows us a version of ourselves we barely recognize. People who gathered without command. Who built without rulers. Who shared belief instead of law. They were not perfect. They struggled. They collapsed, but they attempted something rare. The rise of civilization was not inevitable. It was a choice, made under pressure, made for survival, a choice that shaped everything after.
The stones of Proto-Civilization were buried, but not erased. They waited for a future capable of understanding them. And now, as modern society has its own uncertainty. Climate change, resource strain, growing inequality. The ancient past feels uncomfortably close, which calls into question Proto-Civilization levels is not about them. It is about us. If cooperation and built monuments before kings existed. If belief on united people without force. If humanity owns chose sharing over control. Then the final question is not, what happened for them? It is, what will we choose? When our turn comes again?